honesty and what it is we're calling for, and then we can go on to the next conversation. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone, and really thank you for your time this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavia, for the opening remarks. I'd like to welcome Roland, who, as Flavia mentioned, is a regional researcher covering Uganda and Tanzania. He will take us through the key findings of the report, as well as some of the recommendations that we have highlighted. Karibu, Roland.
Many thanks, colleagues. Many thanks, those who have joined us from wherever in the world. Many thanks for the discussants who will be enriching this discussion. Today, as I'm presenting, I'm really pleased that at least we get to have this report out, but also, a bit saddened by the fact that, we are in a state whereby forced evictions continue happening in countries in the region, and most of it with impunity and without government, resolve to even admit the violations, because that is the first step to, dealing with the violations. Between June 2022 and May 2023, that is last month, Amnesty International conducted research into forced evictions of the Maasai indigenous people of Loliondo. This research followed events of June 2022, when security forces used force that includes live ammunition and tear gas to crush protests by Maasai residents of Loliondo, who are resisting demarcation exercise by the state that would deny them local access to their grazing land. During that time, the residents were removing a concrete boundary. We call them beacons, or the local community and the state calls them beacons, that were being erected to mark, the boundary of a 1,500 square kilometer of land, which is part of Maasai traditional grazing land that the state wanted to or has, demarcated for conservation, now calling it Poleti game controlled area. For the most part of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, it was very hard to access Loliondo even for a research interview. And this includes, authorities deliberately restricting journalists and civil society organization access to the area. Of course, this meant that, conducting interview was very difficult, and had to reach out to community members to speak to them, some of them on phone, including experts and lawyers, and meeting them outside Loliondo. But later on, also having to, conduct further interviews in Loliondo when we could access the area. So most of the interviews with community members that were impacted by these forced evictions happened in Arusha town and in villages in Narok County, namely Olposimoru and Olamuita villages. And I'll be mentioning why we actually had to go to Narok County for further interviews. So in total, the researcher, myself, and later on with a few other colleagues, we interviewed 45 individuals, and that includes 29 impacted Maasai residents, 3 lawyers, one of them will be speaking in this meeting, 3 journalists, a Kenyan chief in Asiana Ward. I've mentioned 2 villages, and I'll be mentioning why we had to interview the chief, and also, interviewed with a few other Maasai community from Kenya, community members from Kenya who are hosting, Maasai from Loliondo. We also got to interview 2 academics and 4 NGO representatives who have knowledge of the situation of the Maasai indigenous people in general. So From the interviews conducted, we were able to confirm that one, the state, Tanzanian government deployed security forces, and these security forces basically are comprised of various units of government, and this included the Tanzania Police Force. It included the military, that is the Tanzania People's Defense Force. It included the game wardens, and these game wardens are basically from the Ngorongoro Conservation Authority, and also it included a field force unit of the police. There were also private company representatives identified by their vehicles during the deployment. So the deployment happened almost exactly a year ago, or we can say exactly a year ago, because from recollection of those we interviewed on 7 June 2022, this is when the multi-agency security forces, state security forces, went and set camp in the villages, and on 9th they started erecting these beacons. Members from Ololosokwan, a village, Olorien, Kitalo, and Arash, 4 villages in Loliondo specifically, gathered to protest the demarcation exercise. They started by removing beacons that had been erected, and what followed is that on 10th June 2022, security forces now came to crush this protest of the Maasai residents, and in the process there was a brutal force used that injured at least 40 members of the Maasai community from Loliondo. It caused the death of a police officer by the name Galas Muita, who died by injuries sustained through being shot by an arrow, and also the disappearance of an 84-year-old Orias Olengio, who witnesses say they last saw him lying helpless on the ground after being shot by the police. In recollection, eyewitnesses also report that there were people that tried to help him up to escape or to a safer place, but because of the gunshots around, they could not really evacuate or get him into safety, and so they left him lying on the ground. So these forced evictions on that day basically meant that people living in Loliondo, people who relied on this 1,500 square kilometer of land, and this is about 70,000 Maasai people, were left without a place to graze their animals, but also there were community members that were living in the 1,500 square kilometer area who were also removed, evicted, basically forcefully from their homes, and later on their homes burnt. Amnesty was able to establish this through, locating some of the homesteads of the bombers that were burned, by satellite imagery that showed, events of June and July 2023, because some of these homesteads were actually burnt after the 10th June forced evictions. During the forced evictions and with the at least 40 community members that were wounded, Amnesty International also established that most of these community members that were injured were refused medical treatment when they went to local dispensaries around their villages. Some of them had gunshot wounds, especially on the legs, and they had to receive first aid treatment from their relatives and kin before they fled to Narok County of Kenya, where they received, medical attention from Enkitoria Dispensary, which is in Ololomoita village. The reason that they were denied medical treatment by dispensaries or health facilities in Loliondo is that the medical representatives actually turned them away, requiring them to go and present Form P3, which is a police form that is required or basically is requested for by medical representatives before they treat people who have been assaulted. These events meant that the Maasai community members that were hurt or injured by police could not go back to the same police or to the same security forces to request for the forms, and they thought that perhaps it was better that they seek for this treatment outside the country, which was nearby villages that are found in Kenya. We also have many community members who also fled because of fear after hearing that there was a policeman killed, and they knew that the security forces were out looking for those who took part in the forced evictions, who took part in the protests against forced evictions. We also have many who also fled, from Loliondo, from the country, because their houses, or they were forced outside the 1,500 square kilometer land, and they knew that they had nowhere to go apart from running to their relatives or friends who are across, the country in Kenya. Many of those who were impacted by the violence by security forces had to find shelter in the wilderness. Many of them spent days, in the forest, either hiding or finding secure places to keep cover, while thousands fled to Kenya, as I've mentioned. We interviewed the doctor who treated most of these people who were injured, and confirmed that he treated many with gunshot wounds. This is despite the state denying that, one, there were people who fled the country, and two, that it used force and especially live bullets against members of the Maasai community. We also found in the report how the state disregarded the rule of law in as far as the legislation that govern administration of land to take or acquire land forcefully from the community without due process. And this basically has to involve agreement around compensation to members of the community, but also has to involve a form of informed consent or consent with the village council, together with the Commissioner of Lands. We further found in the report that there was a situation whereby community members who were displaced, were not consulted with regards to alternative or compensation, as I mentioned, and the state instead decided to arrest its community leaders who it had called for meetings on the 9th of June 2022 to try and convince them around convincing members not to protest the forced eviction exercise that it was carrying out the next day. These community leaders were further arrested and charged with the murder of the police officer that I mentioned before, despite the murder or the killing of the police officer happening a day after they were arrested. Further, days after the arrest of these community leaders, we had continued arbitrary arrest and detention of more people belonging to the Maasai community. totaling to 27 who were arrested and charged with in relation to the murder of the police officer, and in relation to a conspiracy for the murder of the police officer. They were held incommunicado for a few days and arraigned in Arusha Resident Magistrate Court. And throughout the detention, family and friends and lawyers, were not able to, see them. This is the first, during the communicado detention, they were not able to see them, while the police had denied, arresting them. They were arraigned in court and charged with these offenses. And, from what Joseph will speak about maybe later, in some cases, the court really, they were brought before a court that did not have jurisdiction even to hear, to try them. They were all released on 23rd of November 2022 after the Director Public Prosecution dropped their charges. But again, having been held for more than 5 months in what we call unfair trial or unfair processes, is something that the state also has not, said anything about in terms of accountability. We have also 132 persons who were arrested, around that period and were charged with being in the country illegally. 79 of them basically, held in police cells on certain occasions. And their crime was that, they had, most of them had their BCG vaccination mark on their left hand. That is, just below the elbow, as opposed to on the left hand, just below the shoulder, showing that, they were Kenyans, because that is how Kenyans BCG vaccination, where the mark where most Kenyans have their BCG vaccination. And so some of these people were also detained 4 months without proper trial and forced to, some of them sell their animals to actually have, the legal, to be represented, by lawyers or to pay for their freedom. We also report in the this research, destruction of property, as I mentioned, but disruption of a lifestyle and cultural identity, because we are mentioning land that the Maasais have used for ages for their traditional, grazing. Some of them were living there, despite the state, denying this. And we have incidences of, some of their manyatas, which are more of cultural, huts or structures for Maasai's cultural activities. Grazing site, which is very important for the livelihood of the Maasais. We have some of all these structures destroyed. We also have, the rights of this indigenous community, to their lands, their cultural identity and natural resources, to self-government and autonomy, the right to free and prior and informed consent, also interfered with by this action by the state, whereby right now we see that many Maasais cannot take their animals in this 1,500 square kilometer land. And when they do, their animals are confiscated by state authority, wildlife authority. They're required to pay about 100,000 Tanzania shillings to actually have the release of just one of their animals, say a cow. And if they fail to do that, then these cows or these animals are auctioned. 100,000 Tanzania shillings is about 43 USD. So you can imagine if about 10 or 20 of heads of cattle or cows is confiscated, what that means to a peasant, Maasai community member. Children who had to flee, to Kenya, for instance, had their education disrupted, and this can really have an effect with regards to their education. This is also to add that those who are living in Kenya, and some of them have returned back to Tanzania, but many of them, about 60 communities, still live in Ololamuichi and Olposumoro villages in Narok County, cannot return back to Tanzania because, one, they do not have anywhere to go to, and two, some of them still fear being arrested and being charged with the death of the police officer. During the June-July period, when these interviews were initially conducted, some women were reported being separated from their husbands and children and even co-wives. We have people, as I mentioned, who stayed in the wilderness for very long, and this caused really a disruption in their family lives. Lastly, I would just want to mention something around wildlife conservation and and human rights, and just mention that the report finds that the classification of village land as per the Tanzanian law, is very broad, and basically I would say that it includes land other than reserved land which villagers have, and with the definition from the Village Land Act, the Maasai have been regularly occupying the village land, the 400 square kilometer of land, even before these attempts by government to take 1,500 square kilometer. And they've occupied that land from allocation, and they've used the land for grazing livestock belonging to them. And they have had this agreement with villagers, with government, as per customary land law and other customary usage of land that the state provides for in other laws. This land had been allocated to the Maasai community in 1959, and they had been allocated this land after the state relocated them from Serengeti National Park. At that time, it was not a national park. The Maasai had settled in that area in the 18th century. And during the 18th century, and they had settled in various other places, including Kenya and Tanzania. And at that point, settling in that land, there were national parks. Tanzania had not been colonized before. At that point, the first wildlife or conservation laws came to be by the German ordinances in 1890s. And so the idea that the state has mentioned that, this land or the Maasai had not traditionally settled in the area seems to be, problematic. So in terms of hunting and conservation, Tanzania also considers, trophy hunting to be legal, and has allocated same land that is claiming to be conserving to safari hunting companies. And so we see that when they mention that, this land is being held by conservation, for conservation, they're not being very honest. So I will basically stop there. There is so much to say, but I will stop there and let maybe, other speakers take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland, for that comprehensive report on what is found in the report. If anyone would like to know more, we'll share the link to the report that is on the website. Kindly follow us on social media for more information, including the press release, as well as snapshots of the key highlights of the report. As Flavia mentioned earlier, we have a couple more participants that we invited to speak in this report launch. One of them is Mr. Joseph Moses Oleshangai. He is a lawyer and an advocate from Tanzania, with 8 years working on legal issues in Tanzania at the court system, but also at the regional level. Mr. Shangai is one of the leading lawyers in over 10 cases that have resulted from the forced evictions of the Maasai community in Loliondo, Tanzania. Karibu sana, Mr. Oleshangai. So just to get the conversation going, I have a quick question for you in regards to what is the way forward for the community from a legal point of view, but also in terms of what they plan on doing now that they have been displaced from their ancestral lands, given the current state of affairs.
Okay, thank you very much, Juniper, for having us here. And I think Roland has said so much, the situation, and maybe responding to your question, what's the way forward? For a Maasai, and in my opinion, is to address the problem that has happened last year. And there's so much. And I think the title of the report is Communicate Everything. We have lost everything. The land, homes, dressing areas, is about the manyatas and others, spiritual areas, the cultural identities, the economy, the pastoralisms. You cut grass, the animal died, and they have died by thousands. Then they said over 11,000. In an interval, he said the last research was on May. My understanding, by April, end of April, one person paid 77 million shillings to take back his livestock. One person. And it has been by thousands. Many people have lost almost everything. They have been impoverished. So, what's the way forward? The only way forward possible for the Maasai and for us as people, as a community, is to have that land back. For sure, no more, no less. Because without that land, it means if for 1 year they have confiscated and confiscated almost 11,000 livestock, what will happen in 3 years? Maybe there will be no one Maasai having one cow. And that means Maasai without cattle, you have killed everything. Because to the Maasai, livestock means economy that build a self-sufficient economy. It also means tradition. You know, Maasai do a lot of things, even for forgiveness is being used. They use cows for that, and many other things. Without cattle, then we'll be having an history. There were once people known as the Maasai, and will not allow that to happen. So the only way forward, that is of value to the community. Again, addressing the injustice that has happened last year. I think Roland have said that it was on June 10th, which is true. That's when the violence started. But the first information that I got, that we are seeing so much of the military going to the Ngorongoro. Actually, we thought it was happening in Ngorongoro, then they went to Loliondo. I got it on June 6th. So today is the first day we got that something is going to happen. The worst is going to happen. And it has happened in Loliondo. And so all that has happened, not a single accountability. Roland has said a police officer they said he was killed. One person was overrun by the car. Many kids never gone to school again. They ran out for the sake of their lives, to Kenya, Narok County. Women, wounded, and others. trying to save their lives. And they still deny nothing has happened. And then, Roland have said, 27 people give them the murder case. Another 132 give them the Kenyans lawfare. That any person who tried to debunk the narratives, saying the truth, may seriously become a Kenyan or anything. So the law was being used as a tool to silence people. And of course, it's part of the response to your question, because there are so much of the lies. Some people saying the Maasai has been there over centuries. They are not come in 19, what the government is always saying, like when they were creating a gun control area in 1951, there were no Maasai. Maasai were living both in Serengeti, Loliondo, and Ngorongoro over centuries. They now say all the Maasai of Loliondo are Kenyan. That's the lie that I have never heard of. But okay, to shorten it, is the only way forward possible that is of value to the Maasai of Loliondo is one, to return that land, because one, it was taken legally under Tanzanian law. You cannot create a game controls within village lands. As we speak, that is the village lands. And again, Tanzanian law, and Roland have said about the customary rights. Under Tanzania legal system, whether you have a title or you are owning a land through customary rights, they are of equal value. And almost 70% of the Tanzanian land is not registered. So many of the Tanzanians are owning land through their customary rights. They are equal with having a registered title. But the entire Loliondo is a registered village land. And therefore, which has not taken away the Maasai customary rights. So when they say we do not recognize collective ownership, not a single law have taken that. So they're saying that beyond the law. It is not the law saying that. The law recognizes customary right. That includes collective rights of communities. The Maasai has been owning that land over centuries. Then, for interest of one hunter who want to kill all the animals, they are displacing over 70,000 people for money, which I think is not only illegal, is unjust, is not only violating the laws, the constitution, the international law, but our human rights as people. And more so, with so much of the lies and the propaganda that has almost torn everything. Like when we see now the conservations, the way it operates, this is my opinion, the Maasai are being so much targeted using conservation rhetorics to justify displacement. So this is not conservation. It's a way to take away lands. And of course, they have not solved. Actually, well, speaking about Loliondo, maybe Roland is aware, a place known as Lake Neutron, already in the way to Loliondo, they also want it. So they want to make it another game reserve to make our people homeless. That is not the conservation that should be supported by anyone. A conservation system that do not respect human rights, do not respect people's culture. And those animals has been there because of the Maasai. If it wasn't. Many animals were roaming around all these lands in Tanzania and other countries. Why not there today? It is because they have eaten to the last. Then they purport to come and teach us how do we protect the animals. We know better than anyone how that works. And Roland have said 27 people were arrested murder case, 132 even. Then not a single witness was brought to lie that I have seen them committing this crime. Not even one. And all I've said, actually, the 27, of course, in the Tanzanian systems, sadly, when you have a murder case, you are taken in a wrong court until investigation is complete. For almost 6 months, they are told, do not even respond to it. Do not even say, I'm guilty or no, because this is the wrong forum without jurisdiction. Also, for 6 years, actually, is unlawful detention. You are detaining a person without giving him or her the right to be heard. And after 6 months, almost 5 years and so, they were told, we do not have interest in this case. You can understand how injustice happens. And 1 year to finish is a reminder of the injustice that has been happening. It must be maybe around the world, but this is a study case, how in the law, the state machineries, the judicial system can be used to justify crimes, illegalities, lawlessness, and arbitrary state powers, which I think we should find a way to stop it. Because I was having a few minutes, I think I will end there. Or unless there's a specific question, yes.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Just a quick follow-up question that has come up in the chat. Can you share about the impact of these evictions on education for the children of the Maasai community? What is the loss of learning that they have experienced over the past 1 year?
The impact is so much, as the title says, is everything. Because I have said, for example, and actually yesterday there was a debate in Parliament, and one village of Ash lost 6,000 livestock. What does that mean? It means impoverishment. And therefore, to the Maasai, it was a choice now between putting your cows in a small remaining lands in the eastern parts, and they died of starvation, which they have done. They have died in thousands. Or you become a thief in your own land. And then they say, and actually they were even seizing outside and take them to that land, because it's the only way they get money, you know, it's a court system. So losing livestock doesn't only mean you are losing cows. The kid will not be going to schools because the parents only depends on the livestock for that. If you are sick, you cannot go anywhere. And actually, it also includes the grounding of the medical flag doctors, which actually appears before. Now, anyone in Loliondo who want to save the life of the kid will not be having that avenue. Then they have lost home. Over 30,000 people who are living within that land has been displaced by overnight. 27, they were told, we don't want to see you tomorrow. And many of you have seen people with donkeys running out in the night hours because they do not know what will happen tomorrow. And those who were reckless enough in the state opinion and were found on 28, just 24 hours later, their animals, their cows, donkeys, goats, sheep were killed. Imagine a state killing the livestock because the owner, in the state opinion, was reckless enough not to run during the night. That is so bad. That's so terrible. But again, it also means many of the Maasai will not practice their cultural issues again. But because part of that land is not only a grazing area, is not only home for 30,000 people. The rest of the people of Loliondo were grazing that area, but were also using it for their other cultural businesses, prayers, the manyatas and others. They can't do it now because the state things is a prime area for hunting. So for the interest of the huntings, our people cannot do their cultural issues. And maybe the last one.
Maybe Joseph,
okay.
If I may interject, could you please speak on the impact on the children in terms of education specifically, in addition to these many other issues that you've highlighted?
I have said, for example, and I think Roland have captured that. Many of the people found in Kenya were mainly women and children. The children who were to be in schools were then in Narok County saving their lives. And actually, because many people have actually researched it also, actually, some of them were running without their parents. They have met with their parents after several days. So, because of the hunting interest, the kids are not going to schools. The kids are being starved because the cattle has been sold. So if you distract self-sufficient economy, mostly the people who suffers are children and mostly women who are not mobiles, who cannot maybe think like have to go to urban areas because of the situation brought by the settlements. Then the kids who cannot go anywhere, the women remain to suffer. Yet of course, there are reports already out in public that says women were raped in that process. And actually, even in some of the schools, like Manyata and others, some of the kids who were going to school stopped going to schools because their parents have lost their livestock. So you are distracting their future. You are distracting their careers. And that means so much. It's not only taking a piece of land. You are taking everything. You are taking their future. You are killing their future. And they have killed it for sure. Underestimate the impact that has happened, not only for one person, but to the eternity.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Moving on to the next speaker. So one of the worrying trends that Amnesty International has seen in the region is the eviction of indigenous people from the 3 countries in East Africa. We have the Sengwer in Kenya, the Bennett in Uganda, and now recently the Maasai, in the most recent case, the Maasai in Tanzania. In the spirit of solidarity from East Africans, we have a representative from the Bennett Mosoipek indigenous people who are from Mount Elgon in Uganda. David Chemutai is the coordinator of the Bennett Mosop Community Association and has been working for the past couple of years fighting for the rights of the Bennett to return to their ancestral lands in Mount Elgon. David, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, Jennifer, and the other colleagues.
Thank you so much for joining us, David. I would like to invite you to share a little on the struggles that the Bennett have faced, especially in terms of engaging the local legal processes, as the Maasai are currently doing, but also to share a word of solidarity with the Maasai of Loliondo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer, and our colleagues from Loliondo and the Sengwer. And I want to appreciate so much for this launch because it shows the solidarity that we are together and we are fighting stopping the issue of forceful evictions And at this particular time, I want to say that I've been in those areas of, there was a time we were in Simanjiro in Arusha, Tanzania. We had a meeting organized by FPP in East Africa Assemblies. That is when we got to know more about our colleagues in Loliondo, because we were with them in the meeting, and therefore we got to know more what they are going through, and what they were going through is almost the same as what we are going through in Uganda, this side of Uganda. What I can recall is that this forceful eviction has caused many issues, has changed the lives of many, because from what was better to worse, because I remember in 2008, we had what we call the forced eviction, which was documented by Amnesty, by Roland as a researcher. And there were many atrocities which happened. People were arrested, houses were burned, and that is what is still going on as per now in this side, because as I'm talking yesterday, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, they went to our ancestral land and started burning houses, arresting people and beating others. As I'm talking now, I've been interrupted mostly sometime because you receive calls, because we have 4 of our members who were arrested yesterday and they are now taken for detention. And as a leader, we pass through many things, but we are seeing how we can try to struggle until we come out of this. So this happens, they don't want us to enter into our ancestral land. And once you are found there, you are arrested, you are beaten, the houses are burned, and you are taken into the courts of law, and many things happen. And especially of recently, that was last month, there was a destruction of houses, whereby Uganda Wildlife Authority, together with the UPDF, they came and demolished houses, claiming that it is in the national park, as well as destroying the crops. So these things have been going on for quite some time, and community members have lost a lot of resources in terms of money, in terms of life. We have lost many people through shooting, and we have also faced a lot of challenges in the issue of losing the resources, because once the animals are impounded, and you have to bail it out by people paying 50,000 per cow, and this one is not even receipted, and therefore it is the money which enters into someone's pocket. And this is the business which it has been going on with the UA and the community, extorting the community. And therefore, that is the challenge which we have been facing. And as I'm talking now, they decided to leave the issue of Queen District, and they went and impounded cars and arrested more than 20 people in Bukwa District. As we are talking now, we have those who are in Bukwa police station, and we have over 60 cows in a swamp near the border between Kenya and Uganda. And that is, yesterday they had to call me, and when they were calling me, they were accusing me of having a meeting in our ancestral land, and they accused me of many things, but I explained to them to understand that what we want is the issue of our ancestral land to be conserved in the way we want, like, for example, using our knowledge. And we were doing that in order to curb the illegal issue of tree logging, as well as the issue of poaching. But they do not want this, for you to do that. But therefore, what we are doing now is the struggle. On the issue of the legal case, in 2005, we went to court. We got what we call consent judgment, which has never been implemented up to date. But in that consent judgment, it recognizes us that the Mount Elgon National Park is our ancestral land, but which was taken without our prior and informed consent of our community elders. And that is what happens. As per now, we have gone back to the court in Mbale High Court over the issue of human rights abuses, the killings which happened, and the torture which community members are going through, as well as the issue of we want to also file the case on the land rights, whereby we were evicted from our ancestral land, and the issue of the laws, which is, we call them here, UWA 2019 Act, which is, and it is the one they are using to torture our people, arrest our people, and therefore they are not allowing us to talk about it. So such are the things which is happening to our community, but we are
Sorry, David, did we lose you?
Together. So sorry for that interruption a bit. And what I can say is that we are trying to see how all these cases are filed, and we see how everything can move on, because we have really suffered as a community, and the government is not ready to listen to us. And what they are saying is that we are illegally entering into our ancestral land. So we have those who were beaten yesterday, and we have sent some of the people to go and bring them back this side so that they get to the issue of medication, and we see how we can help them. And I want to appreciate Amnesty for giving us the support of medication, because that is what we are using now to help the community members who are affected on the issue of demolition of the houses, as well as what is happening currently. We really appreciate for that. And therefore, we stand in solidarity with our colleagues in Tanzania, that is the Maasai in Loliondo and Gorongoro in other sides, where such things is happening of forceful eviction. We stand together, and we know that at one time we shall have where we call ancestral land and be like any other Ugandan or Tanzanian who can enjoy being in their ancestral land without facing the atrocities which we are currently facing. So thank you so much. That is briefly what I can say on the struggles which we are going on, which is going on in this side of Uganda over the issue of eviction of Maswa Bishop of Benet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David, for that message of solidarity to the Maasai community in Loliondo. Moving on to our second last speaker, one of the two main issues highlighted in our report is the rights of indigenous people, which we see are being violated all across East Africa. And secondly, the issue of forced evictions, whereby people are forcibly removed from their ancestral land without free, prior, and informed consent, and without genuine consultation. So to speak about this issue of forced evictions, we invited some of our partners from Southern Africa. I would like to invite Mr. Thabo Masaku, who is the Executive Director of the Foundation for Social and Economic Justice. It is based in Eswatini. Mr. Thabo, thank you for joining us for this launch. Just to start you off, I would like you to share your experiences in terms of supporting the community post-forced evictions, but also asking you to highlight any opportunities for regional solidarity that you see among organizations and activists working against forced evictions. Thabo?
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues, those who are in a different time zone. Hopefully I'm audible enough. Thank you. Thank you, Juniper, for the opportunity, and we really appreciate that as the people of Eswatini. I am Thabo Masaku, as it has been said, coming from Eswatini, working for the Foundation for Socio-Economic Justice, which is an organization that has been involved in promoting the rights of the underprivileged and the poor people of Eswatini. And we have been working with this sector as one of the key sectors which the organization focuses on, which is people affected by evictions. We work with an organization, community-based organization called Socio-Economic Center for Socio-Economic Rights, which is an organization that was formed as a result of the increase in forced evictions in the Kingdom of Eswatini. So what we have done is that we have provided technical support to this organization and also provided opportunities for this organization to be able to fundraise and raise resources to be able to support the communities affected by evictions. And as we do this work, we have realized that the challenges on forced evictions on a daily basis keep on increasing. And what the Maasai is experiencing in Tanzania is quite painful. And it seems it's a phenomenon that is going on in many countries in the sub-Saharan Africa region. And we have seen that in Swaziland, in the past year alone, cases that have been reported, we have about 7 communities that have been affected by evictions, forced evictions in the past year. Those are cases that have been reported. Please note that. Because there are other cases that are happening and we hear about them way after they have happened. So these are cases that have been communities that have reported their cases, and this affects more than 200 families in these 7 communities. So these are 7 homesteads that are going to be destroyed, and some of them have already been destroyed. And these people have not been allocated the alternative land, and there is no compensation that has been paid to these people when they have been evicted. And also we have a very serious interest that is coming from the private companies and private individuals who pose as investors and come in to evict people who have been residents or who have resided in these lands for more than a century in some cases, and in some cases for as many as more than 50 years in those lands. But all of a sudden someone comes in and claims ownership of that land, as that land is belonging to is now belonging is a farm. So for business purposes, now they are moving the people. Mostly it's tree plantations, palm tree plantations in Swaziland, and the owners of those companies are always linked to the ruling elite in the country. So you find that the people are not even, we are not even able to get, interventions from the government, because there are key government officials or top government officials that are involved in the so-called investments that are leading the evictions in the communities. So there is a role that top government officials and private companies play in these evictions that we see in our communities. But also we have seen this perpetuating poverty, loss of livelihoods, and increasing food insecurities in these communities, which now creates a triple burden to these organizations that are intervening in these instances, because now we have to look into issues of how do we ensure that these people continue to have food, how do we ensure that the affected families continue to have livelihoods or sources of income in the case where they are not able to continue farming, in the case where they are not able to continue providing food for their families. So it creates a serious burden for these organizations that are intervening. But also, on top of that, we have a serious challenge on the legislative framework in the country, where there is insecurity of tenure, and we have a bill around the Farm Dwellers Act bill, which is still not finalized into law, but still that makes people in their own country to feel like they are to be called dwellers. It's a belittling word, because this land belongs to these people, but in their own country, in their own land, they are referred to as dwellers, which means they are temporarily occupying that land and they can be evicted at any time the owner feels like. So, which is also a problem. We feel like the whole land tenure system needs to be relooked in the Kingdom of Eswatini, and also come up with pro-poor policies that ensures that people own the land that they occupy. And also we have seen the increased role of or use of private military in these processes when people are being evicted in their land. And we have seen also the use of the state security agents in terms of the police and the army. They play a critical role in ensuring that they keep people away from their own ancestral lands, which is quite a very unfortunate incident. And from the presentations that we've heard, we are seeing that this is a phenomenon that is being practiced across Africa in the regions where the issues of forced evictions are happening. So I think with those few words, I would just like to say we stand in solidarity with the people of Tanzania, more especially the Maasai community, in the challenges that they are facing in terms of land. I think it will be very important that this movement against forced evictions, be well coordinated to ensure that we have a stronger voice, even at the continental level, to ensure that we rebut the challenges around forced evictions in the continent. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you so much, Tabo. I really like that you have mentioned the need for a movement fighting against forced evictions and for the rights of indigenous people, because it seems that this is a bad practice that our governments are learning from each other across the region. Finally, I would like to invite Sibusiso Nla Tabasi, sorry about that. Hopefully you can teach us how to pronounce his second name properly. But Sibusiso is a human rights lawyer based in Eswatini and has also been working on forced evictions. And I'd like to invite him to speak about gaps that exist in the land governance systems that are in East and Southern Africa, but also, what wins and challenges have you had so far working on forced evictions that the Maasai can learn from? Welcome.
Thank you so much, and greetings, everyone. The surname is Nhlabazi. So Easterners will always struggle. Yes, the problem of forced evictions is a thorny issue in my own country, and as we have learned, even in the eastern part of Africa. For example, in the context of Swaziland, it boils down to the land tenure system. Swaziland, for example, has a land tenure system that demarcates land ownership into two broad categories. You have what you call a title deed land, and then you have a Swazi nation land. Now, there is usually not a problem with title deed land because you have title over the land. But the problem is with Swazi nation land, and the definition of Swazi nation land in the context of Swaziland is that it is the land that vests in the king, in trust for the Swazi people. So it means that the Swazi people are beneficiaries of the trust relationship. Now, what normally happens is that there are these lands, I'm not sure if Kenya or even Tanzania has similar experience. There are this land which we call concession land, which was owned or was given to the white settlers because, you know, they used to own vast of land. And when they left, that land was left vacant. And now you find that people are occupying that land under the view, in our context, for example, they occupy the land under the view that it is Swazi nation land because no one is occupying it. And they occupy this land using traditional structures who allocate this land to them as part of Swazi nation land. It then transpires later or years later that no, actually the land that you are occupying is a farm or is a title deed land because it was a concession. So you have to be evicted. So that's the issue that people are facing. For example, you find that people have been in an undisturbed possession of a certain piece of land for a long period of time, and they are also paying allegiance to the local traditional authority, only to find that they are occupying a farm or a title deed land, while in their mind they were occupying a Swazi nation land. And these people are in the main very poor. They can't even afford legal services. But I just want to narrow it down to say, but we are living in countries now that have a constitution, that have Bill of Rights, right, that guarantees the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. Our constitution explicitly states that, for example, a person cannot be evicted without adequate compensation. And I want to underline that every eviction shall be carried out following due process, and it shall have adequate compensation. But it seems our courts are able to interpret that and factor it in every eviction case, because it seems to me, if I look around, it's easy for the courts to issue eviction orders without even looking at the compensation aspect. Because if a person has a clear right, let's make no mistake. If a person has a clear right to say, I have a right over this land, I have title over this land, and I want to evict someone who is occupying the land, as a court, you may say, okay, well, we can give you that, but where is the adequate compensation? To me, these things should go hand in glove. It can't be that you just evict someone in a constitutional dispensation and leave them out in the court. So that's the main issue that I've seen in Swaziland, that courts are very easy to issue rulings and judgments to evict people, and then do not look at the effect of such an eviction, because we live we are saying we are Africans. We have what we call Ubuntu, the spirit of humanity. So the courts should be the one that asserts that at all costs. It cannot be that an eviction order should just be issued without considering the circumstances of the parties thereafter. So basically, to me, it should be that the courts must be engaged, especially the judicial officers must be engaged. Perhaps they need training. Maybe the issue of land, the issue of land is problematic to them. But if they can have this constant training to say no, but you must consider the circumstances of the respondents in every eviction case. I'll make an example of a case where the community had been staying for a long period of time. And it turned out that the land they were occupying, and they've been occupying over a long period of time, belonged to a national provident fund. And the fund wanted to evict them. Actually, to spite them, the fund even gave them an offer that if you don't want to be evicted, you can buy the piece of land that you are occupying. In a way, it was saying to them, just leave the place. Again, when royal projects are supposed to be undertaken, people have to be evicted time and again without compensation. Mr. Sheila, I think I've seen him here, can contest that, can confirm that. Well, last year, we tried to bring an application to court where a certain man who is a farm dweller, because Swaziland still have what we call a Farm Dwellers Act. So if you are living in a farm, the act calls you a dweller. So he has been living in a farm. He was born there. He's 62 years old now. So he was born on the farm. So a new owner has bought the farm, and they gave him notice to leave because they want to do certain projects in the farm. So we approached the court and say, no, this will come to an end. He's not going to leave. If he has to leave, he must be compensated. And the government surveyor general was very cooperative. He did an evaluation of the property where this man was staying, and we gave the court the evaluation and said no. If he has to be evicted, then he must be compensated. So until today, the judgment is not coming. But we believe that it is one judgment that is going to change, especially in the context of Swaziland, the landscape insofar as the legal landscape insofar as evictions are concerned. There are so many cases, I cannot perhaps take your time, but I think at the heart of it is that I think courts, and we must do trainings to judicial officers, even to lawyers themselves, that I think it's time, even if you represent the corporates, it's time that you advise them that if you want to effect an eviction, there must be an adequate compensation to it. There must be due process, meaning that at all costs, evictions must be avoided unless there is nothing else that can be done, so that we can be able to see an end to these evictions. It cannot be that African people can complain about being dispossessed of their land by white settlers, but post-independence and in the constitutional dispensation, black people are still complaining about being dispossessed of land by their very own. We need to protect the people's rights to ownership of land, because that is sacrosanct. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sibusi. So I think that is such a strong way as we wind up this, a strong way to wind up this report launch. I'd like to bring back your mention of the Constitution. As you said, we are all sovereign countries that have constitutions. And in the case of the Maasai, these forced evictions that have happened to them from their ancestral lands is actually in contravention of the Bill of Rights in Tanzania's constitution. As we wind up, I'd like to thank you for those of you who have stayed. We are 20 minutes beyond 12 noon. We are grateful that you stayed on with us. And just to let you know that the launch of this report is just the beginning of a campaign that we are launching in support of the Maasai community in Loliondo. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Take action for the Maasai, share, retweet our report, stand in solidarity with them so that we can keep the conversation going about the violations that they're facing. And we can also hold the government of Tanzania accountable so that this project can be halted until the Maasai are consulted and they give their consent to the ongoing project. Roland, Tabo, Sibusiso, David, and Joseph Oleshangai, many thanks for joining us for this launch. We're grateful for your experiences, all the information that you shared with the rest of the community. And finally, just before we end the broadcast, I would like to let you know that this recording will remain live on our Facebook page. Kindly keep sharing it out, or you can come back to re-listen. Thank you so much, and have yourselves a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, colleagues. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.